Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience.
Remember how the actual community just rolled their eyes, chuckled, and completely ignored Latinx when the woke brigade tried to make it the next big label for South Americans? Well, here's the kicker. AOC and her team may try to act like they never embraced it, but they still trot it out like a forgotten collectible from the 90s. That little rewrite of history, not convincing Maher one bit. On Real Time with Bill Maher, he called it out without hesitation. So strap in and hit that subscribe button. We're fully along for the ride.
An 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, "We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why." Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer.
Bill starts off by giving Democrats a reality check they didn't exactly ask for, but desperately needed. He lays out why Trump, who they confidently dismissed as having zero chance, even less than a stray mutt, managed to capture several key seats in Ohio. Meanwhile, Democrats were patting themselves on the back, convinced the election was already in the bag, sipping on their pricey lattes. On Election Day, they thought all that was left was to stroll in, toss some confetti, and watch the victory parade roll by. But voters had other plans. A significant number had already decided to cast their ballots for Trump. Why? Because those who initially picked their so-called champions were far too lazy to defend them. Shocking, isn't it? It's almost as if chasing identity politics and stacking up virtue points while ignoring your base isn't exactly a winning strategy for lifelong support. Who could have predicted that?
Their message to you was, I'm an American now. I'm here. Be my lawyer, not the lawyer for the migrants showing up in my backyard. Every month I see a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales.
Political brilliance, right? Bow to a faction with little real influence while ignoring the voters who actually matter. They sprinkled in some woke sparkle by throwing out Latinx just when it seemed their circus act couldn't get any more absurd because nothing says we understand you like labeling a community that already distrusts you. Hispanic voters rejected it, rolling their eyes across survey after survey. Yet Democrats, convinced that cultural lecturing was the key to winning hearts, clung to it like gospel. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Trump walked into a political win without even asking, simply because they managed to push away the very people they needed most.
Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid.
AOC loves to cast herself as the fearless Bronx warrior of the people, but let's be honest, it's more of a marketing act than a true life story. Despite what her campaign posters imply, she wasn't exactly raised in the Bronx. Her actual upbringing is far removed from the struggles she so gleefully dramatizes. Even though she has a predominantly Latino background, identity isn't just about ticking a box on a census form. Culture, language, and tradition all remain vibrant and meaningful. In reality, AOC comes across as far more theatrical and white and far less genuinely connected to her Latino roots. Her attempts at pandering land flat, which in retrospect isn't surprising at all.
And more of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer.
The woke movement refuses to admit that eliminating advanced subjects where Asian students Often Excel doesn't create equity. Instead, it drags education into mediocrity. When quality is sacrificed for the sake of ideology, everyone is left with a watered-down standard. Think about it. If top achievers are denied the chance to excel, what incentive do others have to aim higher? Why stay up late studying if the recognition you earn is no different from a student who barely glanced at the textbook? The consequences are serious. Students from all backgrounds lose not just standards and role models, but the very drive to strive for excellence. The woke agenda doesn't lift anyone up. It pulls brilliance down into complacency. It's unfair. It's sabotage disguised as progress. And the heaviest burden falls on every American child.
If you're a parent and wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher, yeah, you're going to say, congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer. The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot. So I may be looking for new representation.
As a parent, you might have wished schools reopened far sooner after the CO shutdowns, or worried that your child isn't getting a real education because removing a poor teacher is nearly impossible. You might think, teachers, well done, your lawyer is sharp, and the Democratic Party has your back. But then reality hits. Maybe my child is struggling, and suddenly I start considering new options.
President Biden wants to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. Okay, but the poorer 2/3 of American kids who don't get a college degree are going to say, why should the people who didn't go to college and make less money subsidize the people who did go and make more? You want me to chip in so some liberal arts college can build a bigger rock wall? You're not my lawyer.
The harm that woke ideals are inflicting on our education system and on the future leaders this country will inevitably need is hard to overstate. Classrooms remain cluttered with the mess the DNC left behind, even as their influence wanes. Every day, the effects of these policies are visible. Today's students aren't as sharp, competitive, or courteous as those who came before. Why? Because they didn't gain from the Democrats' so-called progress. They were held back instead. The bar was lowered, a shiny equity sticker slapped on, and victory proclaimed rather than pushing students to rise higher. The result, a generation less prepared, less ambitious, and less skilled at critical thinking. Education was meant to be the great equalizer. It's now becoming the great dumbing down under woke leadership. And make no mistake, this is sabotage, not mere failure.
Universal basic income probably sounds pretty good to a lot of people struggling without a college degree. And a number of cities have been running pilot programs in guaranteed income. But the West Hollywood program had to be suspended because it was unconstitutional. They set up a program where 25 residents were to get $1,000 for 18 months, but only if you identified as LGBT, the rest of that. Why? Because they need money more than any other people? Because no one in West Hollywood will hire a gay person?
And that's the truth. The Democrats' obsession with forgiving student loan debt is another reason so many people are frustrated. At first glance, it seems generous, but strip away the shiny packaging and it's just a vote-buying scheme cloaked in moral rhetoric. Students knew the cost of their degrees when they willingly took out those loans. And here's the thing, most of them are capable of paying them back. That's how accountability works. You borrow money, you repay it. Paying off debt isn't just about balancing the books. It builds character. It teaches diligence, self-discipline, and real sacrifice. Meanwhile, Democrats are too busy handing out freebies and encouraging entitlement to instill these vital life lessons, implying that responsibility is optional if you generate enough awareness. That's not leadership. It's pandering. And finally, voters are starting to see through the charade.
When he ran in 2020, Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities. So it seems fair that they jumped the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices the Democrats have to weigh.
By presenting the LGBTQ plus community as the only group facing real struggles in America, the left has turned supporting them into its official political love language. It often feels like every speech, policy announcement, and gesture of virtue signaling is aimed at winning over this single constituency. But here's the question. What about everyone else? What about the heterosexual men and women working tirelessly just to get by? Or the various ethnic and cultural groups who feel overlooked? By focusing so much energy on one community, Democrats send a clear message to millions of other voters: you don't matter as much. Sure, the LGBTQ plus community provided some votes and support, but politics isn't a one-group game. Election results made it painfully obvious that alienating other voters in the pursuit of one demographic comes with consequences. Governing isn't the same as caving, and Democrats learned the hard way that neglect has a price.
Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience.
As everyone knows, Bill Maher treats the marijuana industry as almost sacred, more a religion than a pastime. So imagine his reaction to President Trump's recent announcement. Republicans of all people gearing up for a nationwide legalization push. Yes, really. The very party Maher has spent years criticizing might be the one to achieve the green goal he's been urging Democrats to tackle for decades. The irony is almost perfect. And let's be honest, Maher could face a serious identity crisis if the GOP follows through. Does he stick with his liberal tribe or admit it's all smoke and no fire? Does he swallow his pride, concede that Republicans actually succeeded, and maybe even rethink his stance? Don't be surprised if Maher starts batting his eyelashes at the idea of voting red should Trump's campaign truly go national. Ultimately, Democrats are politically stuck in a cycle that underestimates the public's intelligence, panders to narrow constituencies, and erodes accountability and educational standards. From pushing Latinx into neighborhoods that rejected it to prioritizing identity politics over real voter concerns, their actions have made their priorities painfully clear. They focused on rewarding certain groups, forgiving debts that could have taught discipline, and promoting cultural gestures while ignoring the day-to-day challenges of hardworking Americans. In other words, they're not governing for the people who actually keep this nation running. Spoiler alert. Meanwhile, Republicans are beginning to outpace them on issues where Democrats should have led years ago, like the nationwide legalization of marijuana. The irony isn't lost. The party Maher has criticized for decades may actually deliver the green policies he's long demanded of liberals. It's a reminder that voters are paying attention, and they're fed up with empty promises, virtue signaling, and pandering that substitutes for real leadership. The pattern repeats elsewhere. From dragging down educational standards in the name of equity to alienating millions of voters while courting a single demographic, Democrats have created frustration across generations. Students are left less prepared, hardworking Americans feel ignored, and even identity politics backfires when it prioritizes symbolism over substance. Voters notice when accountability is absent, when brilliance is sacrificed for mediocrity, and when leadership is replaced by pandering. That frustration doesn't fade. It becomes the loudest message on election day, louder than any catchy slogan or flashy campaign ad. So, as this video comes to a close, the takeaway is clear. The era of empty gestures and selective governance is wearing thin. Americans want results, responsibility, and policies that actually serve them, not just performative politics.